NFL show, as always, is brought to you by manscaped.com. Make sure you use the promo code TGT20 so your beard can be as clean as Sam Teets, who is my co-host. I'm the host, Mike Goodpaster. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you? Good to have you
Oh,
back, by the way.
Well, and now the NFL's wide open since Joe Burrow's out and the Bengals won't be winning the Super Bowl. So your Steelers have a shot now.
Oh, are you sure you're not going to hop on the Ryan Finley bandwagon there, Mike, and maybe ride that to a national title?
A national title? I think the Bengals could win a national championship, but a Super Bowl is way out of the question. I don't think Ryan Finley is going to do anything good for the Bengals, but I like Ryan Finley. He's a nice guy. I've actually hung out with him before, but he's not ready for this. We're going to start off, though, in the AFC, and we're going to go to the Green Bay Packers and the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts did everything they could to give this game away at the end, but in the end, the Colts end up beating the Packers. The Colts are coming off a big win over the Titans. Now they beat the Packers. I think this is our dark horse Super Bowl contender all of a sudden.
You know, I'm going to hop on with you there. I've been doubting Philip Rivers all year long, but if you ignore like the first 5 or 6 weeks of the year, I'm just looking at what he's done since basically week 6. It's been a tale of 2 seasons for him. He's been phenomenal so far. And you know what the killer was for Green Bay the other day, besides that fumble in overtime? The Colts are able to run the ball. I mean, that's been the problem for Green Bay the entire year, and the Colts came out and proved again yesterday. Jonathan Taylor had 90 rushing yards. The team as a whole ran for over 130 yards. And when you can establish the run with the Colts, you have enough there with Philip Rivers to win these kind of games. Rivers now in the past 5 games, he has 10 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. He's performing much better. And if he's getting more comfortable in that offense and Michael Pittman's starting to establish himself as a legit potential number 1 option, the Colts are only getting better as the season is going on.
And if you remember last week when we did the NFL quarterback rankings, I gave you trouble about Philip Rivers, and you stood your ground.
I did. I really did. I had him I think 18, I believe.
Yeah, which is really, I'm sure that'll improve. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 47-yard touchdown down the middle of Indianapolis' Tampa 2 on 3rd and 10. Number one, I don't know why you're running Tampa 2 on 3rd and 10 with the team driving the ball down the field with a little over a minute left. And then Mason Crosby kicks a game-tying field goal to send it to overtime. But heroism is fleeting sometimes in the NFL as Scantling then fumbles a couple minutes into overtime. The Colts win the game. Where do the Packers go from here? The one good thing for the Packers is they're obviously going to win this division because there's nobody here, I think, that can threaten them. But as you talked about, the lack of being able to stop the running game is what got them blown out in San Francisco in the NFC Championship game last year. And to me, this has all the earmarks of the same ending for the Packers.
Yeah, I think we could see a first-round exit from them, actually, because you can really build your team to counteract what Green Bay does well. As long as you're able to run the ball, I mean, we can see it with time of possession as well. If you can control the clock, and we said this before with all great quarterbacks, keep the quarterback off the field, you can win these kind of games. And really, any team with a solid running game, any team with a top 15 run-off offense can control the clock against Green Bay. So I don't know where they go from here. I think they'll probably be a first-round exit in the playoffs. I do think they have a pretty easy end to their regular season. They do play the Bears twice, the Eagles, the Lions, the Panthers, and the Titans. Maybe you lose those Titans and Panthers games. But other than that, I think it's 4 probably easy wins in that schedule. They're going to finish with a good record. I just don't know how they're going to perform in the playoffs against the league competition.
All right, next up, the Kansas City Chiefs barely escaped the Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas, I'm telling you this, Sam, I know you don't believe me, but they're a Super Bowl contender. This is a good football team. Derek Carr, even though he threw the desperation interception at the end of the game, played well enough to get the win. He led them on that last-minute drive that ended with the touchdown pass to Methuselah. And then the Chiefs come back, and Patrick Mahomes, who did not look his best during the game, did what he often does. He comes back in the last minute of the game, goes 75 yards with the game on the line. Patrick Mahomes is the real deal. The Chiefs are the real deal, but Las Vegas is also.
Yeah, it's a shame because if the Raiders were in a different division here, we might see them potentially competing for a division title because I don't think you're going to say they're not significantly worse than like the Colts or the Titans. I don't know that they're significantly worse than the Pittsburgh Steelers, to be honest. So I think to me, if they were in any other division right now in the AFC or even in the NFC potentially, they would be competing for a division title. I like what I've seen from them so far. I think I had them at 9 in my NFL team power rankings last week. They're going to move up, actually, despite losing this game, because they've proven now they can hang with some of the best offenses in the NFL. Derek Carr had to throw the ball out last night. He came through for them throughout the entire night. I just think what really hurt them was not being able to establish the running game as much as they usually want to. That's probably the biggest flaw for this team right now. Sometimes the offensive line doesn't hold up in those situations. Other than that, I really like what the Raiders have going for them.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the Raiders' schedule, I think 5-1 to end the season is very possible for them. The schedule's not real rough. And the thing is, you talked about if they were in a different division. Well, if they could just stop Patrick Mahomes in the last minute, they would have a shot to win the AFC West right now.
Yeah, and that's how good of a team they are. I mean, they really did have an opportunity there because Mahomes had thrown the interception to Trayvon Mullen, and that was a chance where the Chiefs were driving to score there. He turns the ball over, and Derek Carr leads him down the field. Less than 2 minutes left. They score a touchdown, take the lead. So it's not like that offense for Las Vegas was having trouble at the end of the game. They were driving down to set up their own game-winning drive. So really, this is a complete team to me. I think the defense has some issues, but I think overall, the Raiders are one of the best teams in the entire NFL.
How about this? I think every team has some issues right now. And when you look at that, I think what it comes down to is which teams have the least amount of issues. And I think the Raiders fall into that category right now.
Yeah, and I'll say this. The Raiders kind of remind me a little bit of the vibe I got from the Tennessee Titans last year, where the Titans kind of came into the playoffs. They weren't really viewed as a Super Bowl contender, but they were able to beat teams and knock teams off in the playoffs. I think the Raiders will be that kind of team. They'll have more momentum going into the playoffs, I believe, but they're going to have the ability to knock off teams with greater win totals and be able to make a deep dive into the playoffs. I think they are that kind of team that will carry that momentum in and make a significant difference come postseason time.
All right, just when we thought the Tennessee Titans were dead, they come up with a huge win yesterday against the Baltimore Ravens. Are the Ravens in trouble is the question, and my issue is still with the Ravens defense. It has been all year. And Derrick Henry ran for 195 yards. I don't know if anybody's ever done that to any Ravens defense. And Lamar Jackson, once again, couldn't get it done in the clutch when he had to complete a pass. He didn't get it done. The offensive line and the defense is an issue in Baltimore. Right now, I think the Ravens are in trouble. And I think Tennessee, their defense all year has had a hard time getting off the field on third down. And again, it kind of plagued them a little bit. Tennessee's defense is my question. But I think even though everybody's kind of writing off Tennessee, I think Tennessee is still a threat with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown. But the Baltimore Ravens, to me, I'd say you stick a fork in them. They might make the playoffs, but they're not going anywhere if that defense, the offensive line, and a quarterback who can't make the plays when it matters.
You know, they're having difficulties right now because of injuries defensively. So they don't have Calais Campbell. They don't have Brandon Williams. Those are their premier run stoppers along that defensive line. Without those two guys, you saw what Derrick Henry did to them. And even without them, though, they contained Derrick Henry for the first half. I think he only had like 40 rushing yards. It was really the second half where he kind of cut loose. That's been the tale of Derrick Henry. He specializes in dominating in the second half of games. Baltimore, I'm worried more about them offensively than defensively. I think they'll get healthy. I think they'll have their personnel back. I'm not really worried about Cleveland in the AFC North being better than them. I think Baltimore come back and finish second behind Pittsburgh. My big issue really is the offensive identity for this team is somewhat questionable. I think Mark Andrews is the only consistent piece on that offense to me. I know they have three good running backs, but haven't really found a way to use them consistently. Lamar Jackson has been up in the air, questionable week to week every single time this year. I don't know what you're going to get from him. They don't have a real good receiver. And without Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, I mean, their offensive line, no Yonda because he retired, no Stanley. They don't have much offensive line-wise. So I'm really concerned with the offensive identity of the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, and it's 6-4. They're going to go to Pittsburgh next, Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, to battle the Pittsburgh Steelers. And after that, they play the Cowboys, the Browns, the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Ravens. I think this game is imperative for them to win if they want to make a serious, run as a Super Bowl team. If you drop to 6-5 here, it doesn't look like the Raiders are going anywhere. And there's a bunch of teams with 6 wins, and even with Cleveland, you've got to go to Cleveland. And if the Ravens are still having issues stopping the run, they could very easily drop that game also, Sam. And then you got the wild card there, the Giants, who may be playing for the division title, as stupid as it seems when you get close to New Year's.
Yeah, and you have to look at Cleveland's schedule as well. The Browns don't have a difficult schedule at the end of the year. So it's really going to come down to, Baltimore, you have to win. I think you have to win most of the games the rest of the year. You have to at least get above Cleveland before you lose another game because you're outside the playoff picture right now. They're not one of the teams slated to make it in if the season ended today.
Well, and they've got a game against Dallas that all of a sudden becomes dangerous because Andy Dalton's back at quarterback, so they have a legit NFL quarterback. And you've still got Ezekiel Elliott there. And if you can't stop the run, you could really struggle against the Dallas Cowboys, Sam.
Wait, and we saw Dallas yesterday. I mean, Zeke Elliott looked much better when he got Andy Dalton back there. And he was playing against the Vikings defense that had been getting better. And Zeke had a very good day. Andy Dalton had a great day. There are a lot of weapons there in Dallas, and they have a lot of momentum now that Dalton's back. I wouldn't rule out Dallas making a run at their division and suddenly becoming a team that could upset a team like Baltimore.
All right, next up, Taysom Hill. Is he the answer in New Orleans? Yesterday, they beat the Atlanta Falcons 24-9. The thing that sticks out to me here is this. I think Taysom Hill can be the answer to win games in the regular season. I still don't think when it comes playoff time that Taysom Hill is going to be the answer. But I think defensively, the Saints team's good enough. They run the ball good enough. They're still going to be fine in the regular season. My question comes if you get to the playoffs and there's no Drew Brees. We have no reason to not think Drew Brees won't be there. But still, in my mind, I think I would go with Jameis Winston, but I'm going to defer to Sean Payton, who has a Super Bowl ring that I don't have. And I'm still not convinced with Taysom Hill, but I think the way they are using him, he can be successful.
No, I think he actually threw more pass attempts in yesterday's game than he had at any point during his NFL career prior to that game. So really, we didn't have a lot of tape on Taysom Hill. We didn't really know what to expect. But I think Sean Payton's game planned for him pretty well. He was only playing against Atlanta's defense. It wasn't like it was a great defense he was going against. But at the same point, if he can go 18 for 23 and 200 yards a game, that's pretty solid from him. And like I said, Sean Payton's pretty obsessed with the idea of Taysom Hill being the guy of the future. So I don't know what's going to go on there. But if he's capable of doing this week to week, I think he should be the starter then because it's enough for New Orleans right now based on what their defense is doing. You got a great linebacker like Demario Davis. And I think they sacked Matt Ryan like 8 times the other day. I think Cam Jordan would have a monster day. He really broke out, had 3 sacks himself. If you have that defense behind you, you don't need a quarterback to throw for 300 yards a game.
Yeah, and I think that is why you see Sean Payton wanting to play him instead of Jameis Winston. If you're just going to go straight up quarterback, Jameis Winston did throw for more yards than any quarterback in the NFL last year. But the one thing you got to remember is he's also threw significantly more interceptions and turned the ball over more than anybody else. And when you've got a defense and you've got a running game, as long as you don't turn the ball over, you're going to be all right. And I think that's why when I look at this, I think Winston is your best option if you want a quarterback. And if this makes any sense, maybe the best option to continue to win games, though, is Taysom Hill because maybe you won't turn the ball over as much. And he looked really good with Michael Thomas, who was 9 catches, 104 yards. So I think you've got Sean Payton, who's one of the premier play callers in the NFL. I think the Saints win this division. I think you get Drew Brees back. And then the thing comes, if you get Drew Brees back, maybe you'll see more packages for Taysom Hill. And the reason I say that is since he's a great play caller, if you've got 2 guys that do completely different things, and you got to prepare for both, it makes it harder as a defense to be able to prepare for that.
Well, and also Taysom Hill in the past, we'd always expected him to kind of run the ball when he was in because he only won the ball like 18 times in his NFL career prior to this past weekend. So we always expected when he was in the game to run the ball. But now he's proven he's capable of throwing the ball 20-plus times a game and not turning the ball over. You could see more packages where he's out there throwing the ball. That makes it even harder for defenses to game plan when they see him come in.
All right, next up, we always talk about Deshaun Watson. I know I always catch hell for saying that I think he's better than Lamar Jackson and just as good, if not better, than Patrick Mahomes. But once again, I think we saw that. I think he completed one of the greatest magic acts of 2020, and he single-handedly led the Texans to their 3rd win of 2020, spreading the ball among 9 pass catchers, completed 28 of 37 passes for 344 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 121.9. And his touchdown run was as emphatic as it was impressive. And when you watch this game, and I don't know why you'd want to, neither team's really that good, but Deshaun Watson's special.
Yeah, he's a great quarterback. He struggled against Cleveland last week. They had trouble moving the ball whatsoever offensively, but really bounced back. I mean, this is why I picked New England to win this game. The Patriots are coming off a win against Baltimore where they game plan perfectly for Lamar Jackson and for what John Harbaugh is planning on doing. On the other hand, you had Houston coming off a terrible loss to Cleveland where they hadn't been able to do anything. I thought the Patriots would come in here and just game plan their way past the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson. And he really came out and played great for them. He led them in rushing yards as well with 36 yards. He was doing everything possible. He made Brandon Cooks and Jordan Akins and Will Fuller. He made them look great the other day. And like I said, this is a guy who's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL and potentially even better based on his talent levels. He just doesn't have a great team around him.
Yeah, the one positive thing for New England was the fact that Cam Newton actually looked like he could throw the ball a little bit yesterday. It was 26 of 40, 265 yards and a touchdown. So they've got that. But let's face it, this is a team talent-wise. It's a 3 or 4 win team. It's probably going to end up with 6 wins. I think Belichick's done a good job with them considering the shortcomings of this team. And I still think New England, we're going to see do something that will put them back as a contender next year.
Yeah, I think so too, because they're going to have a lot of cap space this offseason. They've already said, we kind of sold out the past couple of years. We knew we were going to have trouble cap space-wise this season, and that's exactly what happened. But now you're going to have a lot of money this offseason to throw out a bunch of free agents. You're probably going to move on from some guys like Stephon Gilmore, who's getting a little bit older, and you'll find a way to fix this. And I believe Belichick will do that. I don't know if Cam Newton will be there in the future, but Newton did have a good day yesterday, probably the best game of the season so far. It'll be very interesting to see how Bill Belichick turned this all around in the offseason.
All right, next up, Sam's Pittsburgh Steelers are now 10-0 as they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 27-3. I don't think we learned much from this other than Jacksonville's really bad and Pittsburgh's offense or defense is really good. And what else can you say about this? I mean, Jake Luton was in over his head. This is a Steeler defense that brings people from everywhere. And I think the Steelers are definitely a contender. And Big Ben didn't need big plays to pick them apart. He was really good on the quick intermediate throws. And he completed at least 3 passes to 6 different receivers. I think Pittsburgh is a definite threat. I just don't know if they're a big enough threat to hang with the Kansas Cities or even the Las Vegases, even though it doesn't make much sense. Because I think what we've seen from the AFC North is I'm not real convinced Cleveland or Baltimore, either one are that good. I think Pittsburgh is the best of this division, but I'm not really sure how good this division is. And this division's playing a really easy schedule this year. And I still question when it comes down to it, if Pittsburgh can score enough points to beat a Kansas City or Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question because we haven't seen Ben Roethlisberger throw a lot of deep balls this year. It's been part of their offensive scheme, though, to kind of throw short passes, not let him take as many hits. That's been part of their game plan. So you have to score 35 points to win. I mean, interesting to see if they could do that. Pittsburgh certainly has the offensive weapons, I believe, in Claypool and Deontay Johnson. They actually have 3 receivers with over 500 receiving yards this season. They have weapons here, even if they're not all superstars. The question is, can you establish a game plan to beat a team like Kansas City? I don't know because they haven't had to so far.
All right, next up, we're going to go to I think you picked them to win the Super Bowl this year, the Denver Broncos. And the Denver Broncos, that pass rush was what we thought it would be. I think that's why you thought they had a shot to be a playoff team this year. And they completely baffled Tua Tagovailoa, who had his worst day in the NFL, just 11 for 20 for 83 yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick entered in the fourth quarter, led Miami from the 1-yard line to the Denver 15. They fell just a little short at the end. This is a huge loss for the Miami Dolphins. It's a huge setback for a team that looked like they're on the cusp of being a real contender. Where does Miami go from here? I mean, do you stay with Fitzpatrick or do you go back to Tua?
I mean, Brian Flores has already said Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the starter moving forward. They play the Miami Jets. They play the New York Jets next week, so that's a little bit of a nice game to kind of ease Tua back in, kind of settle his nerves a little bit. You're going to have an opportunity to grow from this. This is my concern with him a little bit, though, because he hadn't faced the most difficult competition so far. He goes up against a Denver team that sacks him 5 times. They also have some good players in the backfield in Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. They really weren't able to move the ball whatsoever. And you saw Fitzpatrick come in, and in less than a quarter, he easily outdid the yardage production from Tua. So I think this is a little bit of a learning experience for him. He's certainly going to have to settle down a little bit. I think Tua is still your long-term starter. But I think this tells us right now the Miami Dolphins are still probably – I mean, they might make the playoffs, yeah. But I think there's also a good chance they miss the playoffs here just by a game or maybe just because of win-loss records against our competitive teams. The Dolphins, it almost would have been better if Miami was a little bit more of a losing team this year, just leave Tua Tagovailoa in. Because you had a chance to make the playoffs, you pulled him and put Fitzpatrick in. I understand that. It's confusing. I think the Dolphins are still a good team. I just think they're a year away, and we now recognize that.
How about this? I wouldn't have pulled him.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I'd have left him in the game. I mean, once you make that decision and you say he's your starting quarterback, you can't take him out because I think this Brian Flores, he was a defensive coordinator for the Patriots, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times we see this happen with defensive coordinators that take over head coaching jobs where, you know, a quarterback can struggle sometimes because of that. And the reason I say that is this: if I'm the starting quarterback and you just told me I'm the starting quarterback the rest of the season, and then you pull me, my worry as a head coach is maybe the next game we go 3-and-out a couple times, or I throw a pick, and then all of a sudden I'm the quarterback and I'm pressing because I'm thinking, man, he's going to pull me. I think this is better to just leave him in, let him play, let him learn, and let the chips fall where they may. If he is your guy of the future, let him be your guy of the future. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks ruined. I mean, Ryan ruined a guy, Mark Sanchez with the Jets, because he basically always just told him for 3 years, don't lose us the game. And the problem is, if your quarterback is thinking, don't lose us the game, he's not thinking, what can I do to win this game? And you need a quarterback that will go out and try to make a play. They were down, 20-13 when they pulled him?
Yep, I believe so.
So you're down 20-13. If this kid comes in and you still lost the game, but maybe Tua comes in that situation. I mean, he's a kid that if he's special the way we think he is, he may play horrible the whole game and then all of a sudden make a play at the end of the game to win you the game or to get you to overtime. How many times have we seen that with Patrick Mahomes, even in the Super Bowl? He's not playing that well, but damn it, you better be up by more than a touchdown in the last 5 or 6 minutes or he's going to get your ass. So I think it's a mistake to pull him out of the game. And, I mean, like I said, Ryan Fitzpatrick's not going to take you to the Super Bowl. Tua probably isn't either, just because he's a rookie. But we don't know what Tua's got. And if you draft him that high and you think he's special, why not find out?
Well, yeah, you mentioned why not just leave him in because you can come back and still have a good drive at the end of the game. I mean, how about we've seen what plenty of guys do that in the past. I mean, we see what Tebow do it over and over again in Denver for crying out loud for 1 year. So you have other quarterbacks who've done this in the past. I would have loved Tua in as well. I think they got a little too obsessed with winning versus the development of Tua. If you're trying to develop Tua for the future, I think you leave him in the game. I think they were obsessed with winning in the moment and competing with the Buffalo Bills. And you put in Fitzpatrick, who you thought might give you more of an immediate chance to win the game. I think that's a misconception. That's not how the priority should be. Tua should be your main priority here because he's going to carry you for the next potentially 10 years versus winning a game against the Denver Broncos when you're realistically not going to Super Bowl this year anyways.
Well, how about this? I think it's similar to what we saw in Cincinnati. You get Joe Burrow, so now you're going to throw the ball 50 times a game to try to win. The problem is this. The problem with most coaches is there is no sight into the future. Everybody's like, right now, we got to win this game we're playing right now. What they don't understand is if you look at a guy like Belichick, look what he did with the Cleveland Browns. 91, they were terrible, won a game or two. He gets there. 3 years later, they're in the playoffs. Now, you got to have an owner that is willing to put up with that, but your eyes always have to be on the future if you want to be a success long-term as a head coach. Anybody can come in, do so. I mean, I just don't see how this helps Tua to be the future quarterback of this team. I think he has to start the next game. I don't think he should ever be taken out. And once he's taken out, it's time to find somebody new. That's just the way I look at this. I mean, you put him in, play him. Eli Manning with the Giants was it 2004?
Yeah, it was rookie years, 2004.
Yeah, as his rookie year, the Giants were, I think, 5-5 or 5-4, and actually had a shot to make the playoffs. They benched him, or they benched Kurt Warner. All right, Kurt freaking Warner, who'd won a Super Bowl a few years before that. They benched Warner. They said, Eli's our guy. Eli stayed their guy until he wasn't their guy anymore, and that was 15 years later. And the thing was, I think the Giants lost every game the rest of that season. And at 5-6, they never, spit the bit and said, well, we still got a shot to make the playoffs, so we're going to put Kurt Warner back in. They just wrote it out with Manning. The next year, I think, they make the playoffs with Manning. A few years later, they win a Super Bowl. A few years after that, they win the Super Bowl again. So I think there's a lot to be said because the one thing that is of the utmost importance outside of toughness in an NFL quarterback or a quarterback at any level is believing in himself and knowing that the team, especially the head coach, believes in him. So I'm not saying that, that goes by the wayside because they pulled Tua. I'm just saying if it's me, I'm playing Tua. I'm leaving it in the game. I'm letting the chips fall where they may, and I'm riding my job on him.
I agree. I was going to ask you that question. I thought, too, it was really strange to pull him there. Because really, like I said, developing Tua and developing this team is your utmost priority. It shouldn't be beating the Denver Broncos here in a short-term one-week thing versus potentially ruining what could happen 5 years down the line.
Yeah, because like I said, if I'm that quarterback, then I start to doubt, number one, if this coach is truthful. He said I was the quarterback. Now I'm not because I played bad for 3 quarters. He also played really well for the previous 8 quarters and won games, and now they're in a playoff position. Ryan Fitzpatrick with that team didn't have them in a playoff position. They were a 500 team, that was it. So how are you going to sell out the 8 previous great quarters he played for 3 bad quarters? Why not just let him finish the game? You're still in the game. Try to win it. If all of a sudden you're down 30-6 and you want to pull him, that makes sense to me because, hell, you don't want to get him hurt in that situation. But I don't think there's a lot of defense for this. All right, next up, we're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, who beat the Minnesota Vikings. I never thought I would say that, Sam, but it does help when you're the Dallas Cowboys and you got Ezekiel Elliott with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton is an efficient quarterback. He's not spectacular, but he played really well in this game. The Cowboys win to go to 3-7. The Vikings win streak is stopped. They're now 4-6. I think the Vikings had no shot to make the playoffs at 4-6. If for some reason the Cowboys probably have a 50-50 shot at 3-7. And I think the guy who really stood out to me here was Zach Martin. And I don't think his role in this Cowboys win can go without mention. He's a 4-time All-Pro guard. They bounced him to right tackle for this game, and he took to that role like a duck to water. His pass protection was stellar, no sacks allowed, and it was a really quiet day for Vikings defensive end Jalen Holmes, who'd been making a lot of noise lately.
Yeah, they really keep Andy Dalton upright against this Minnesota defense that have been getting better over the past couple of weeks. And Dalton really, like you said, efficient quarterback. He had a really good day, actually. Both him and Kirk Cousins kind of put up similar numbers to some extent. And it came down to Dallas's offense against Minnesota's defense. The defense could not stop the Cowboys. And even though the Vikings had a very good game offensively, they just could not keep up with what Dalton and Zeke Elliott were putting out on the field. And a future Hall of Fame guard got moved to tackle because you don't have Lyle Collins, you don't have Tyron Smith. He moved to tackle and had a great game. Just shows you he's a great overall football player and one of the best offensive line, if not the best offensive lineman in the NFL right now. And if you're Dallas, you have to be really hopeful. You're only half a game behind the Philadelphia Eagles right now. And the Eagles, we'll talk about them later, but they looked horrible this past weekend. I think all the momentum is with Dallas and Washington and the Giants right now. I believe one of those teams is actually going to make the playoffs and not Philadelphia.
Yeah, and you know what's really crazy about that? I think the Dallas Cowboys, if Andy Dalton's healthy, are going to make the playoffs.
I'm right there with you. I agree.
And people can say you changed your mind, but if you remember when Andy Dalton took over as the quarterback, I said I thought the Cowboys would win the division. Andy Dalton went down, they had no chance. With Dalton back, only a half game out, I think the Cowboys can win this division. And a lot of it's because of Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles, who got beaten by the Cleveland Browns 22-17 yesterday. And we're in week 11, and Carson Wentz isn't showing many signs that he's anywhere near close to the level that made the Eagles a Super Bowl contending team 2 and 3 years ago. He's slow in the pocket when he throws the ball. He made a huge mistake while pressured in the first half that ended in a pick six. And he failed to get rid of the ball in his own end zone in the third quarter, which resulted in a safety. And, Philadelphia can point to its health issues as an excuse. But after a while, excuses are just that. They're excuses. You got to win some games right now. And if you're Carson Wentz, if you're playing in this game and you look at the rest of this division, you should win this division.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the coaching staff you have. You should not be losing right now. And the issue for me comes by, last year they had all these injuries and they were still fine. Carson Wentz still made the playoffs, and he actually had arguably the best month of his career down the stretch to make sure Philadelphia made the playoffs. This year, he's been just awful. He's been arguably the worst quarterback, or one of the worst quarterbacks in that division, even worse than a guy like Daniel Jones, who I've been critical of since last year. So to me, Carson Wentz, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's just between the years at this point, But it seems like things are just going super wrong in Philadelphia. And I know the offensive play calling is drawing some criticism as well, so that hasn't been fantastic either. I think Doug Pearson said he was going to make sure Carson Wentz rolled out more times this week against the Browns than he had in past weeks. He only had one rollout the entire game, and it was in the fourth quarter. So to me, it was just very strange how this all worked out. I think this year is basically a loss for Philadelphia, even though they're winning the division right now by half a game. And I think you kind of just have to run things back next year and hope things get better. And if they don't, then you maybe consider making some changes.
Maybe they could get Nick Foles back. Next up, Joe Burrow was injured. It's the worst day in the history of Western civilization. The Washington football team beats the Bengals 20-9. The Bengals were seemingly in control of the game up until that point. Then Ryan Finley came in and left no doubt on the fact whether he can be an NFL quarterback or not. But the good thing for Ryan Finley is he's being coached by Zach Taylor, who should not be an NFL coach. So Mike Brown should not be an NFL owner. So everything seems to be back to normal in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. It's definitely disappointing, but I watched that play live, and it didn't look good from the start. And definitely when the camera panned back, you saw Joe Burrow on the ground clutching his knee. You knew something was seriously wrong. We later find out it's a torn ACL, maybe even more damage than that in his knee. So he's going to be out for the rest of the year. He'll come back next year. And, the Bengals weren't going to make a playoff run here anyways, but certainly we're hoping that Joe Burrow can continue building that repertoire with Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, T. Higgins, because there were a lot of things going right for the Bengals here down the stretch. It's just that, now season's over. We've seen rookie quarterbacks bounce back in the past from injuries. Deshaun Watson heavily had torn ACL his rookie year as well. But, it's just definitely a disappointing end to the year for the Bengals.
What a good thing. A torn ACL is not the same if you're a Bengals fan as Kajana Carter in 1996. Everything's different than what it used to be. So he will probably be back. We don't know the exact extent of the injury yet. I thought Chase Young played really well for the first time yesterday, really. Ryan Finley got sacked 4 times, threw an interception, and had a quarterback ranking of 0.0 by the end of the game. This is all on the Cincinnati Bengals organization. That's all I'll say. This entire thing on Joe Burrow, him getting hurt, is on the Bengals organization. And people could say, well, Mike Brown wasn't blocking. But you know what? Mike Brown, instead of re-signing A.J. Green to a huge contract and getting Xavier Fulo or whatever the hell his name is and a bunch of cornerbacks, when he got Joe Burrow, and I love T. Higgins, dude, but damn. You got to get some offensive linemen if you're going to invest in a quarterback that is obviously a franchise quarterback. And, I mean, like I said, I love T. Higgins, but the offensive line needed to be addressed. The defense needed to be addressed. They addressed neither. So, once again, this is a short-term fix by a football team. That short-term fix, if we get Joe Burrow, all our fans will be happy. They'll leave our coach alone because he's young and, everybody will be excited about Joe Burrow. We'll let Joe Burrow throw the ball 40 or 50 times a game behind a shitty offensive line and hope nothing bad happens and everybody will be excited going into next year. But the way that always works out is when you do things half-assed, bad things happen. They did things half-assed in the offseason and everybody was excited because they spent money on DJ Reader. DJ Reader doesn't protect the quarterback. He goes after the other team's quarterback, and I know that's needed, but you can't tell me you can't go out and get free agent offensive linemen better than that. You can't tell me you can't draft better than that. The problem is he gets hurt because you got 8 people in your scouting department. You can't go out and get offensive linemen. If you're Mike Brown, you're nothing but a piece of shit anyways because you've already screwed the city out of all the stadium money where he doesn't have to pay a dime for it. So this is the same thing. The Brown family, and everybody always says, well, Mike Brown's the reason. Paul Brown's the reason this happened. Because Paul Brown was an ass too. I mean, if you look at the history of Paul Brown, he was a great football coach, but he was a miserable human being. I mean, that's all I got to say about that. He's a joke. Because you wouldn't believe how many ex-Bengals I interview. I mean, Joe Kelly, perfect. Well, I've been friends with Joe for a while now. And he talked about the year he was drafted. 11th player, first round of draft. He's sitting down to dinner with Mike Brown to talk about his contract, and they make him an offer. All right. He finds out later that, who was it? Maybe Lewis Billups, who was drafted in the 3rd round. The Brown family offered him the same money they offered Joe. You get David Fulcher, who I've had on the show a few times. I know a little bit. He talked about when he went to the Los Angeles Raiders, he walks in the locker room and there's a pop machine. And he goes and he keeps sticking money in it, and the money keeps coming back out. And he's looking around, wondering what's going on. One of the Raiders walks up to him and says, "Don't worry. You're in the NFL now. You don't have to pay for the pop." He just hits the Pepsi sign, and the Pepsi pops out. In Cincinnati, players had to pay for it. The players in Cincinnati used to practice at Spinney Field, which was, you wouldn't let your cats play at Spinney Field. Nobody likes cats. You'd let the cats would die from Spinney Field. It was like playing on a rock. You had all this sewage around. It stunk. It was disgusting. Paul Brown was such a miserable asshole that he had one of the greatest football coaches of all time, and Bill Walsh is his offensive coordinator. 1969 through 1975, they make the playoffs 3 times. When Paul Brown decides to leave and retire, instead of giving, Bill Walsh the head coaching job, he gives it to his buddy, Bill Tiger Johnson. That Bengals team was really good. 1975, they lose in the playoffs in Oakland 31-28. He gives the job to Bill Tiger Johnson. Bill Walsh leaves. Bill Walsh tries to get jobs. When he interviews for jobs, whatever job he would interview, Paul Brown would call that team and tell them all kind of bad stuff about him. And it all came back to this. Paul Brown didn't want somebody better than him or as good as him or even close to him to succeed him. So instead, the Bengals end up with Tiger Johnson. The 49ers, 4 years later, hire Bill Walsh. And then Bill Walsh beats the Bengals in 2 Super Bowls. And he beats them by out-coaching them. All that goes back to Paul Brown. So all these Bengal fans that want to bitch about Mike Brown, don't forget, apple don't fall too far from the tree. Paul Brown was a brilliant football guy, but he was miserable. He treated players like shit, just like Mike Brown does. So the Cincinnati Bengals get what they deserved. Unfortunately, the fans don't. The players don't. Hell, former players that go to Bengals games right now have to pay full price for a ticket. The only way to get a free ticket is to sit at a table and sign autographs for 3 hours before the game. It's a second-rate organization. That's it. And this is why this happens. Zach Taylor is not an NFL football coach. He's just not. Nobody on the staff is a football coach in the NFL except for Darren Simmons, maybe. That's it. Why do they have a 38-year-old snot-nosed dumbass coaching the team? It's pretty obvious. Who in the hell else wants to come here?
Well, for Joe Burrow, we talked about earlier in the year that he was going to get killed if they keep putting him behind that offensive line the way they were. Keep having him throw the ball 40 to 50 times a game. We said this earlier in the year, that this was going to get an injury eventually. We didn't anticipate it was going to be an ACL tear. We thought he was going to get banged up more often, but he got hurt seriously.
I just thought he'd get his back broke. Hell, with the Bengals training staff, it's a wonder he didn't die going to the hospital.
Yeah, you just got to think now. You got to fix the offensive line. You have an offseason to do it now. You have an offseason and the draft to fix that offensive line. That has to be your number one priority. And even if that's the only priority, fix the defense a year down the line maybe. But you have to fix the offensive line immediately.
Hey, I'll give you a story. When my son was 8 years old, he played quarterback. But before the season, like 4 months before, he broke his wrist skateboarding, which I told him was stupid because that's only hippies and communists skateboard. But he breaks his wrist. And we go to the doctor. The doctor wants to get a specialist. And he throws out this name, such and such. He's a good doctor. He could do it. And I said, "Isn't that the Bengals team doctor?" He said, "Yeah." So I was coaching arena football then in the Cincinnati area. And I asked our trainer, I said, "Man, you know anything about this doctor?" He said, "Yeah, he's the Bengals doctor." He said, "Whatever you do, don't take your kid to him." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because he don't know anything." He said, "He's a horrible doctor." That was the Bengals team doctor. And if you look at the history of the Bengals, this always happens. I wrote an article on The Grueling Truth about it. There's so many guys here that have wanted to get the hell out of here as quick as they can that were good players. There's been so many guys that have been injured that never could return. The organization is just a cesspool. It is from the Brown family. And, I mean, the NFL should probably take the team away from Mike Brown and insert another owner, hopefully leave it in Cincinnati. But I'll tell you this, if Joe Burrow doesn't turn this around and doesn't come back and doesn't win games by 2026, that sweet-ass stadium deal that Paul Brown got, he can get out of it, and he will. He'll leave the city of Cincinnati in a heartbeat for more money because that's all he's in this for. It's a family-run operation. It's where they make all their money, and Mike Brown's an asshole. Go ahead, Sam.
I can say Joe Burrow. I mean, I can see Joe Burrow, if it continues this way and you don't fix the offensive line, don't give him the defense, Joe Burrow could leave after his rookie contract.
Hey, Joe
It's that
Burrow,
simple.
dude, if they don't change the offensive line, Joe Burrow may never get a second contract.
Yeah. I mean,
We don't know how bad this injury is. And if we're going to continue to talk about this game, we got to bring up Alex Smith. Alex Smith's first win after her horrific injury 2 or 3 years ago. He did come back from it. Not everybody always comes back the same. I know medical technology now is so much better than it used to be, but who knows? And I mean, right now, the Cincinnati Bengals risk their future because Zach Taylor don't want to run the ball. I'm sorry, Joe Mixon, if he's not there, you still got Gio Bernard. Run the ball. You don't have to throw this kid to the wolves and have him throw the ball 50 times a game. Now, Zach Taylor should never see next season. So Ryan Finley, great guy, in over his head. Bengals don't win another game. That easy. Except for when they beat the Steelers.
They beat the Steelers. It's not going to happen.
I know it's not, but it could have if Joe Burrow would have still been there. All right, let's move on to an organization that might be worse than the Bengals. The Detroit Lions got shut out by P.J. Brown and the Carolina Panthers. Now, of course, P.J. Brown was a stud in the old XFL back in, what was that, back in the 80s? He made his NFL start. He wasn't great, but he was good enough to beat the Detroit Lions. He did complete 70% of his 34 passes for 258 yards. The Lions are basically a broken team. Matt Patricia's going to get fired. Matthew Stafford's velocity didn't appear to be what it has been because of the thumb injury. The first half play calling suggested that he had issues with it, and they were run heavy, and DeAndre Smith was non-existent. This, to me, looks like a team has pretty much packed it in.
Yeah, they didn't have DeAndre Swift on Sunday. He was hurt. They didn't have Kenny Galladay. So they're missing their two best options on offense. You got P.J. Walker on the other side. And they almost gifted the Lions this game because Walker threw 2 interceptions into Detroit's end zone. So basically, they were driving the score. He threw 2 picks into Detroit's end zone. This could have been a 34-0 game, but the Carolina had those 2 costly turnovers. I mean, if you wipe those 2 turnovers out, though, I think P.J. Walker had a great game. He actually played really well. I like what I saw from him. And Carolina is still a threatening team, even without Teddy Bridgewater and Christian McCaffrey.
All right, next up, the New York Jets almost won a game. They had a big lead, but, well, they were way behind. But the Chargers, this tell you how bad the Jets are. The Chargers can't even blow a lead to the Jets. The Jets are so bad they can't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I know it got close. It got down to 1-score game at the very end there. Flacco didn't have a horrible game, minus the one interception, but really, you don't have much of a running game. You don't have much of a defense. Your receiving options are, I mean, at best developing with guys like Denzel Mims. On the other hand, Justin Herbert had another good game. It's still got to be very worrisome if you're a Chargers fan, the fact that your team cannot finish in the fourth quarter or in the second half of these games. I mean, you had a big lead. You outscored the Jets 17-0 in the second quarter, and you almost lost this game. You have to be worried moving forward. The Chargers, if it's coaching staff, if it's just the players, I don't know what it is, but you have to be worried if you're a Chargers fan. Your team's going to continue having this stretch where they're going to potentially lose these close games at the very end.
And Keenan Allen was awesome in the game yesterday. The 3-time Pro Bowler is at the top of the league's leading receivers right now. He doesn't get the same kind of push that Julio Jones or DeAndre Hopkins does, but it's hard to think anybody's better than Keenan Allen right now.
I mean, he had a great game against the Jets the other day, and he's had games in the past. I think he's had big games like this in the past as well with Phillip Rivers, but 16 receptions, 145 yards, and a touchdown. Allen is a top 10 receiver, I think sometimes top 5. There are weeks where he kind of drops off a little bit, but certainly he's been around that point for the past 3 or 4 years of his career.
All right, tonight we have a rematch of the 1979 NFC Championship game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What was the score of that 1979 championship game, Sam?
You're asking me the score of all things. That's not going to happen, Mike. You know that.
I asked you the score a few months ago, or like a few weeks ago. It looks like you would know it by now. It was 9-0. The Rams beat the Bucs in Tampa Bay.
You're right. You did ask me that. Now I'm thinking about it. You did ask me that.
Hmm. All right. So
Hmm.
Rams Bucks tonight. Who do you like? Because this is a huge game, and I think it's a tough matchup to call.
No, I agree. I think the Rams and Bucks are actually surprisingly similar. At this point, neither team's very good at running the ball. I think both teams have good defensive fronts. And I think Tom Brady is certainly better than Jared Goff. I think that would be the ultimate difference in this game. I think Brady's going to give them an advantage, and the Buccaneers are going to win. But they both have a lot of receiving options. The running games are iffy. Offensive line's questionable. Good defensive fronts. I still give the Buccaneers a slight advantage here because of Tom Brady. I think he's just better than Jared Goff.
Well, yeah, that's obvious. But you know what? Don't you think Russell Wilson was better than Jared Goff?
You know what? That's true, but I think Seattle Seahawks did not have the defensive front that the Los Angeles Rams had. I think there was a little bit of difference there defensively. And you know what? They didn't have much of a running game either because Seattle did not have Carlos Hyde or Chris Carson for that game.
Okay. I think there's intangibles here. I think schedule-wise, this game favors the road team. The Buccaneers have not had their bye yet. And Arians admitted earlier in the week that his team is tired and he's had to alter the schedule to keep them fresh. The Rams have not had that problem. They've had to bye. I think that's one thing. I think under pressure is another one. And I think the numbers are pretty clear that Tom Brady is a better quarterback when he's got a clean pocket. Brady has been sacked 14 times this season, with 9 of those coming in 3 losses, both New Orleans contest and Chicago. Now, not surprisingly, Tampa Bay lost all 3 of those games. He struggled. This Rams front 7, led by Aaron Donald, is really good. And I think Jalen Ramsey is really good. And I think this, Sam, when I look at the point spread on here, let me look. It's 4.5 right now. I'll take the Rams in 4 points all day, but I'll go one more than that. I think the big question is Jared Goff, and can they take advantage and find Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp down the field? I think the Bucs still have a questionable secondary, and I think the Bucs offensive line is questionable. I think the Rams will smack the Bucs in the face, attack the quarterback all game long. They'll give Brady fits. I think Rams win 27-23.
Really? I don't know if the Rams will win by a close game score. I think if the Rams are going to win, it's probably going to be a blowout, wouldn't it be? Because if you're going to smack Brady around like that, he'll make mistakes later in the game. We saw against New Orleans. When you get to Brady, because he kind of
in New Orleans, you don't have Jared Goff. I think it's 27-23. I think the Bucs will put up a fight. And you're right. It would not surprise me if instead of 27-23 or 24, it wouldn't surprise me if it's 27-13 or 27-10. I think the Rams right now defensively are built to stop the Buccaneers. And I think that right now with the Rams passing game, say what you want about Jared Goff. He threw for 300 yards last year against the Seattle secondary that wasn't that good, that didn't have a great pass rush. Tampa Bay's pass rush is significantly better than Seattle's, I think. Secondary, I don't know if they're any better. So I also think that the Bucs are the older team. It does worry me with no Whitworth there, but no Whitworth there is why I have a tendency to think this game's going to be a little bit closer. But if I was going to bet it, I would take the Rams in the 4 points right away.
I'm still sticking with the Bucs. I think the Buccaneers are just going to outplay them. Looks, they do have Jalen Ramsey, who's a great cornerback. I think he'll shut down whoever he covers. He's been one of the best in the league this year, if not the best. Why consider there's just so many weapons now with Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin, also alongside Mike Evans and Gronkowski and Cameron Brate. I think there's enough there that if they game plan right, they'll be able to avoid Aaron Donald getting Brady sacked there. They'll get the ball out quickly and move the ball down the field just over time and slower drives.
Yeah, but you got to get the ball away quickly. So with Tampa Bay or with the Rams, if I'm the Rams and I got Jalen Ramsey, I take away whoever I want with him. I play man press, and I let Aaron Donald just eat all day long with the rest of that defensive line because you can eliminate short passes by just attacking them. And I think when you watch the Chicago Bears, that's what the Bears did. It's what the Saints did the second time. And I think that's what makes it so difficult because you could sit there and say they have too many weapons. But if you don't have enough weapons on the offensive line, having enough weapons running down the field aren't going to help. Because really, just bring the house at him. Play man press. Bet you can get to him. If you do, you're going to wear him down early. He's 43 years old. I mean, he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but I really think if you just attack him right now, you can beat him. Because if you don't attack him and you sit back, yeah, all those guys are going to run all over. But when you talk about getting the ball out quick, getting the ball out quick is isn't it kind of what the defense is doing also? I mean, if the defense is sitting in a Tampa cover 2 the way the Colts did the other day, yeah, you can pick them apart all day. But if you're taking a snap, Aaron Donald's coming. You got man press on your outside guys, maybe 3 or 4 yards off on your slot. Safety over the top, double teaming whichever one you want to take away. Because remember this, I can double team Gronk in the slot, or I can double team Evans outside or Godwin or whatever. I probably don't have to double team Antonio Brown anymore. My guess is he's not the deep threat he once was, and I'm not worried about deep threats because I'm coming to get your ass if I'm playing defense against Tom Brady. So I think if you see the Rams come out and play man, especially man press, the other thing you can do is you play man press enough and you're smacking on Brady enough. What you also could do is you get enough pressure with that front four, you don't even have to blitz. So you could play 4 and just go after him, play man press, and actually drop your backers more into coverage, still have a safety over the top. And if your offensive line can't block Aaron Donald, ain't a damn thing you can do about it, because I can take away the quick guys with the man. And then if I play over or under, I can take away the short stuff too.
I suppose that's kind of what they did against Seattle last week. Seattle was one of the best scoring offenses in the NFL.
That is exactly.
And they held them 16 points.
Yeah, and DK Metcalf didn't make that many big plays, did he?
No, because Jalen Ramsey was on. Shut him down entirely.
Exactly. He took him out of the game. And you still got Tyler Lockett. Seattle still has other weapons. But the thing is, they were in Russell Wilson's face all day. Did they blitz him a lot?
I think they brought a couple of blitzes, I'm pretty sure, because I'm looking at the guys right now.
They'll bring a couple blitzes. And in one of the picks you saw Russell throw in the second half was they showed that they were going to blitz. They were playing man press. They bailed out of it, and he threw the ball right to the linebacker. So that's what you can do with him here. If you can come out and press them early and get to Brady in the first quarter, this is a wrap. It's a done deal. Go to Vegas, bet your life savings, and you win some money.
Well, you have to blitz a little bit more with Russell Wilson, too, because he's mobile. With Brady, you might not have to blitz at all because he's not going to get out of that pocket.
Well, the thing is, they didn't blitz Russell Wilson a whole hell of a lot because you don't want Russell Wilson out of the pocket. You want him in the pocket. With Tom Brady, you might blitz more because you want him out of the pocket. But if you blitz him, you better be playing man press on him because he's going to get you quick. And the thing then is they like to rub the rub routes and do all that stuff. But the rub routes and the crossing routes can be nullified if Aaron Donald's big ass is rushing up the field into his face, because if he is, Brady's got to stand there and take a hit. And right now, if I'm coaching against Tom Brady, I want him to take as many hits as possible because he's 43 years old. And the more I hit him, I mean, he looked tired and he looked wore out by the middle of the second quarter against the Saints second game, didn't he?
Yeah, he really did. I mean, he didn't look at all like himself against the second half. He was done.
Yeah, so they'll break his will. And that's hard to do, but we've seen it broke this year. He's 43. He got 6 Super Bowl rings. He got a supermodel wife. He got a big, beautiful house. He don't need that no more. Now, if you let him sit there, yeah, he gonna take it because he's Tom Brady. But this is the thing. If you're going to play somebody that's great, you got to be willing to go get him. The big key here is they can go get him without blitzing. And that's a scary thought because Aaron Donald, he's not an end. So Brady can't slip up and still complete the pass. This is going to be moving the pocket into Brady. Brady's going to have to move one way or the other. And the Rams have good defensive ends. So you've convinced me. I think this game, the final score is 27-10 now. 27-10 Rams.
You know what? Just to be different, Mike, I'm still going to stick with the Bucs, even though everything I've said has pointed to the Rams being the better team right now, or the better matchup, at least for the Bucs. I'm still sticking with Tom Brady. And if
I've convinced you. You're probably wrong, though, right?
Oh, yeah, but if I lose, I lose. And if I'm right, you know what? I get a little bit more.
Have you been right on one of these arguments we've had yet?
Oh, I probably got one. I think I probably must have got one this year.
There was one, but I don't remember what it was. So
I think, you know what? You picked the Bengals over the Steelers, but I think you just did that to do that.
Well, yeah, because hell, I don't pick the Bengals over anybody. We accept that first game of the year against the Chargers. But all right, guys, we will be back tomorrow. We doing quarterback rankings or power rankings?
Quarterback rankings will be ready for tomorrow.
All right. Also, manscaped.com. I was in Panama City. I didn't take my Manscaped. I looked like a Sasquatch after I came back for 5 days. It took me 4.5 hours last night to shave everything. But the good thing is this, Sam, since it's been charged, I still got another 4.5 hours to go because it'll last 9 hours. So if you want to come over and shave your stuff, there's another 4.5 hours left on it. But I would take the little brush and clean it out first.
Yeah, probably, man. I would hope you would do that. But, the lawnmower 3.0, it's got a little light on it too, right, Mike?
Yeah, it's got a little bitty light. And if you're Steve Risley, you've got the little bitty magnifying glass too. Of course, Steve played for the 1981 Indiana Hoosiers. He's on the show every once in a while. How did Steve do picking games with you and Sam McGinnis?
Oh, he got 4 games right, I'm pretty sure.
4?
4 out of the 12.
4 out of 12? How'd you guys do?
I did pretty big. McGinnis actually probably beat me, I'm pretty sure. I got, I think, 7. 7 right?
How many games did I pick wrong?
0, because you didn't pick any.
0 is all that matters. So once again, even when I'm not here, I win. All right, Sam. You can follow Sam Teets at Sam Teets 33. Got that?
Yep.
You can follow me at Grueling Truth. We will be back at 1 tomorrow, just like we are every day, Monday through Friday. But for now, I forgot one thing. Check out Rockfin, too. We're doing pretty good on Rockfin now. You get exclusive content from The Grueling Truth. You get all of our content from The Grueling Truth on Rockfin now. Not like YouTube. They do not demonetize you because of things you may say or do, because we all know every once in a while Sam Teets will say stuff that's out of bounds. But the way we control that is we go to Rockfin. Everything goes there. Anything goes there. And it is free to sign up for an account. You get everybody's free stuff. It's not just us. There's hundreds of other people with content creators, from Jason Burmas, Tom Lemming, who's the college football recruiting guy. You get all of that. If you pay $9.99 a month, you get everything, including the premium content from everybody. So I suggest you go to Rockfin. Check them out at rockfin.com. Subscribe to us there. Like us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Tell your friends. Tell a pal. And then get manscaped.com. Promo code TGT20. It'd be great for Grandpa's nose hairs at Thanksgiving. Don't you think, Sam?
Hey, you know what? That's the perfect use, Mike. The perfect time, too.
It is. I thought about doing a commercial where I just go around to old folks' home and trim everybody's ears.
You know what? It would actually probably do pretty well if you did that.
It probably would. Maybe I'll do that later today if I got nothing else to do. But all right, for now, for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpastor. You've been listening and watching to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.